Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Justin Abrams. Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am the CEO and founder of Aryo Consulting Group. It's a consulting firm based in Boston and really operations all across the globe. We've gotten about 350 clients in the past 3 years, in the past 5 years. Our really strategy is meshing the strategy with the marketing and the tech so that businesses can actually grow and scale appropriately without being too affected by all the lags and the issues. So we try to think of ourselves as like a McKinsey for small business.
Interesting. So tell us about how you decided to start this business and what was that journey like?
It really came out of necessity, especially during COVID. So I had a lot of family and friends who had their own businesses, really just giving ideas, help, trying to work through issues, them saying, take a look at my Facebook ads or take a look at my Google ads. Something's off. Our sales are obviously going to be down. So we really need someone to come in and help us. That really was a catalyst for this. It really was not something I had planned to do. And then 6 months later, things started to change and improve. And I decided, I think this is something I could do full time. Got a little lucky. We got some big clients. I was working Tony for a bit and then started to spin this off into my own thing. But it really was one of those like side hustles to full time.
Wow, that's really cool. What kind of services do you offer? I know you mentioned a broad range, but can you list some of those different services?
Yeah, and I do think like one of our biggest problems is we try and do too many things and that it doesn't lend itself well. Like every consulting firm says, oh, we'll just solve your issues. It's like well, there's thousands of issues. So what I like to think of us is first we just come in and audit the company, the strategy, what's going on, why are sales down. A lot of times clients are coming to us because sales are down or they're flat. And then we can come in and similar to like a PCP, a primary care physician, right? They might not be the one to solve your issue, but they can give you a good idea of what's going on and then send you to the right people. So if it's digital marketing strategies that are very common, we can certainly help you. But there's other people as well, and we just want to be agnostic to that. And in a lot of cases, there's other marketing agencies or other hosting companies that kind of have marketing. In some ways, we continue to work with them because I think it might be working really well. So we really come in, try to solve some of that. But the big thing we do is really wrap our strategy mind into all of this so that you're actually getting real return on investment, especially some of these 20 to 30% margin businesses. You can't run a one-to-one ROAS. It's not the same as comparing that to a SaaS. So if you're hitting that 3x ROAS, you're actually losing money if it's a 25% margin business. So how do we bring that McKinsey mindset to the marketing for small businesses?
I love that. Okay, let's dive into that. One of those last points you mentioned about the dangers of optimizing towards ROAS without understanding profit margins. Can you explain why companies might fall into that pitfall and why that might happen?
Yeah, so ROAS is really what the internet marketers of the world look at. And it's really just how much are you returning on your ad spend? And people use revenue in considering this. They don't use profit because profit is a very hard thing. And you have gross margins, and then what happens after you add the company. So marketing agencies do not care about profits. They care about revenue, and it's easy to track. Check it. The problem is when ROAS was originally came out, it was really built on the internet and that kind of sales model, which is an 80 to 90% margin business. If you're selling software, it should be somewhere between 80 to 90%, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but that's what we're talking about. So if you're returning 3x on your revenue and it's 80%, it's about 2.5 to 2.8x in profit. That's great. You can continue to keep that going. If you're a landscaper or a roofer or a plumber or an HVAC, that is not the case. You're actually losing money. And so a lot of people I know, they were running that quote unquote like marketing 3x strategy. And they're like in their mind, they're crushing it. But they're actually not. They're losing money. And the marketing agencies, maybe they don't want to tell you this, but you're going to be in a world of hurt if you continue to try and get that 3x. And so there's a lot of other strategies that we can do to reduce that profit cost and those issues that you're going to see with ROAS strictly on organic, right? Reaching out to your community, posting a lot, SEO, adding additional locations, low cost strategies that are going to move the needle so that you can still run Google ads, right? I'm not saying don't run that on Facebook, but it really needs to focus on that like profit, like the POAS, profit over ad spend.
Yeah. I really like that. And I'm glad you mentioned Google Ads and paid search, because as of posting this, I will have just launched a tool to help businesses with paid search optimization. So I'm going to do a quick shout out to SearchMaster right now. But moving on, so to close that out, so let's say they're losing money on 3x. You mentioned one of the things you'll do is lower the profit or increase the profit margin, lower the costs, and also amp up the organic performance. Would you also just target a higher return on ad spend of, let's say, 5x or 6x or something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
And is it, as I know Google allows you to just put in what your conversion target return is, would you just change it to like 6x? And how does that typically work? Does that like because I haven't tried that. Like what happens when you do that?
It's a yes and no. The problem is you might not be able to spend that much. So I have clients that they want to be number one every time someone searches plumber in Tallahassee, right? It's like they don't want anyone to compete, and they'll gladly spend 10 grand a day in theory, but they can never reach that. They're probably spending a couple $100s. So in many ways, yes, Google is great, and I want to be there. It's a billboard that you need to be there every day. But you need to do more than just that. And the same with, I see a lot of agencies, they've been pitching Google plus Meta. Are you really going on Meta, scrolling through Instagram and then finding a plumber? Like it's not like let's just fit this in because it is already what we do. And it doesn't work for a lot of these like home service businesses or even enterprise SaaS. Like people aren't scrolling through and are like, oh, let me buy just ERP system. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way. And I think that's where you have the art and the science meet, where an experienced marketer will have seen the same pitch from every tech advertising company enough times to know that somebody's lying, right? Facebook tells you you got 100 sales, and LinkedIn tells you you had 100 sales, and you only had 120 sales, and you're like, somebody's lying. I don't know who. There's definitely, like, you have to understand that the advertising companies themselves want you to imagine that their company is what is causing your conversions, and you need them in order to make your sales. There's no alternative for the customer, but that's typically not the case, especially when you have these like super low bottom of the funnel tactics where you already need a certain amount of intent for the prospect to even see the ad. So at that point, when I think about paid search, I think about competitive conquesting, and not necessarily branded competitive conquesting, but it exists in the super competitive, like in super competitive areas of your market. I think that's where paid search has the most benefit. And I think that in the near future, when there is advertising for LLMs, like in the search results, which I'm expecting to happen, it will operate very similarly to paid search, where you're working on ensuring that your business is the top ranking business recommended when the user searches in the LLM for best plumber, for instance, in their area. And speaking of that, do you see LLM advertising to be the next sort of big tactic in marketing that we really have no really understanding of how it's going to work yet, but probably is coming?
I think so. I already see 5 to 7% of our traffic coming through ChatGPT and other LLMs. To me, it's a white space. With that said, I think a lot of it does roll back into SEO. So if you're ranking high for best plumber in Boston on Google, ChatGPT does seem to just take that data and utilize it. And so I think if you want to get really ahead of it, just always try and optimize for Are you the most effective? Are you the best? How do we define that? Reviews, customer interactions, Angie's List, all of those stuff that are annoying to deal with, but they do help you on that Google side. Be like, all right, this might not help me as much on Google because of lower search volume, but it will help me in the ChatGPTs of the world. And we're seeing actually higher conversion because the intent and the trust for whatever reason is higher on ChatGPT than it is on Google. It's crazy.
Yeah. Do you have any other tips on optimizing towards LLM performance?
I don't trust what I would say right now. I think it's still a little early. So I think it's going to take us another 6 months to a year to see the shakeouts and really what's working. But the biggest problem is that we don't even know where the traffic is going to come from. Like ChatGPT today accounts for the vast majority of LLM searches. Gemini, I'm already starting to use more. I already use Claude as well, a lot more. Like, are you optimizing for Yahoo? Or are you optimizing for Google? Or are you optimizing for AOL? And we're in 2001. We don't know, is Google going to be number one? Because right now Yahoo is the spot. So it's a very hard thing to know. Honestly, I'm a little concerned with what's happening at ChatGPT. I feel like they are losing a lot of their top researchers. I think Zuckerberg just poached $1 billion worth of researchers. So do they remain number one? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've checked out like the open positions at these companies, and I'm not seeing a lot of marketing positions, which is interesting. You would imagine that in such a hyper competitive and burgeoning industry, marketing would be a very important element. So I imagine that, and I don't also see a lot of ads for AIs. It's interesting. That's an interesting weakness in the market that almost has no, like, they are drowning in money and they're not hiring any marketers. I expect that to change. I'm curious who your bet is for who is the Google, and I'll say mine after.
I think it's going to be a three-way race between. Personally, I do still think that ChatGPT and Gemini are the two top ones. Personally, I use Anthropic's Claude the most, but it gets no love. At a certain point, it's great for development, but it's not going to get the search volume. I just don't see. I have been playing around with Grok. I just launched. Personally, I don't like it. I didn't think it was very good. It wasn't answering any of the questions I wanted. But they have a lot of the data power side, and Elon has way more money than anyone else. So it's probably, if I were to guess, it's probably Gemini that wins this out, but it could be ChatGPT or Grok.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's yeah. So my take is, I think you made a very valid point that Claude gets no love. And it is very niche right now. But it is, in my opinion, the best AI. Like, bar none. Like, anything I get from a different AI, I will put into Claude. Because the thing is, and I'm going to go on a soapbox really quick, that I really don't like prompt engineering. It reminds me of just, I don't even have a good example, but like when people tell you this like magic thing that you just put in and you get like a magical output, it's like nobody's out there one-shotting things and just typing in some magical prompt and getting like a perfect answer. We are all having like lengthy conversations with very detailed prompts. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like prompt engineering thing. I get it, like you want to include certain things, but at the end of the day, you just need to be really detailed. That's what it really comes down to. And I think that the best AI understands that we don't have these perfect prompts that we're putting in, and there should be behind the scenes tailoring and prompts layered before the AI responds. And I think it's pretty clear, like, Claude has the best set of those, like, in the background prompts that stand in between the user and the AI. And that's why we have such clean output from Claude and reliable output. Where the other day, so I tested Grok for Heavy because I'm building this app and I'm running into some challenges. And I'm like, okay, if Grok 4 Heavy can clear the path here, then it's worth it. And so I just for 1 month I got it, and I gave it my problem that I was running into, and it solved the problem. But before I put that, so I'm using like a prompt system where the AI will create it and then I'll put it into Lovable and then Lovable will code it. Because that way I can get a much more detailed set of instructions. So but before I put Grok's prompt in, I gave it to Claude and I was like, Claude, can you double check this? And Claude's like, this is correct, but it got like this piece wrong, this small part of it. So let's say it's got 90% correct. And then it fixed it, and then I put it into Lovable, and everything worked. So I think like trust is a very big factor when it comes to code, and I think that is a signal for other things that people might do with the AIs, especially when it's like communicating on our behalf. So I know that kind of fell flat. Like that was one of the first use cases. People were like, oh, this is going to communicate for us, and like then it started to become very obvious what was the AI. I think that's going to come back eventually when the AIs gain back our trust. But the trust is a humongous piece of the AI puzzle. And I think Claude by far has the most trust for myself. And I think just generally from what I'm hearing. So I think that given enough time in a purely meritocratic system, Claude should win. Claude should become the next Google. I think that depending on who invests in marketing more strategically, and I think to your point, Grok, with all of Elon's money, has the potential to be marketed better and adopted more widely. I think it is a very strong AI, but I think that it, like anything, there's a balance between raw intelligence and refinement. And I think Grok has that raw intelligence, but not the refinement to catch mistakes. I think Claude is slightly less capable, just slightly less capable, not enough really to turn me away from it, but slightly less capable, but more refined and reliable. So it's like, what's the better option? It's obviously the one that's like slightly less capable, but more reliable and for actual use. So yeah, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. And if you look like Apple versus Microsoft years and years ago, Apple really pushed for developers and programmers, and that was their market, which was a small market in the 1990s. There were not a lot of developers. And I feel like that's where Claude has been pushing heavily on, is we just want to be like Claude Code is really the predominant player now. I think if you asked the average person, they wouldn't know about Claude, but they would know about if they were developers. So they could be taking that approach. I really do Claude, but I also feel like they're like more academic in their approach, and they're much more focused on like the downsides of AI, which is fine. But from a marketer perspective, like Elon does not care about that, and he's just going to go heavy. And so I'm really curious. So you would not pay for Grok Heavy again at $300 a month?
No, but I'm not like, yeah, I would say I'm not their target audience, because if I was like a fully successful entrepreneur with this tech product that's like getting money, absolutely. But if I'm just trying to build like a MVP, like I can't like spend that kind of money unless I have a very specific use for it. $300 a month is like quite substantial. It really adds up. And I see the value if there is an ongoing use case. For me, it was just, I want to clear this block. I want to get the best AI possible that has the best chance of clearing it. And it worked. I don't know, like with a certain amount of prompting with Claude, it probably would have worked too. I was just lazy and I was like, let's just see what this thing can do. It just was really, I want to try it. And I definitely don't regret it. It's just like, I'm happy. That's the thing with these AIs is like, it's almost like a new model is emerging where since you pay monthly and you get like close to an unlimited amount, obviously they're all rate limited, but let's kind of get an unlimited amount for a month. Like I'm organizing into sprints where for like 1 month, I just work like endlessly on this, like using all of the tools. I max out the tools and I just use all of them as much as I can in that month. And then I take a break until like I have the energy to get back to it. Maybe that is like the next month. Maybe I take a month off. It's monthly sprints that, because it's like I'm economically incentivized to do a sprint in those 4 weeks with all of the tools maxed out. So that's what I've been doing.
And the cool thing, I think, if people are listening to this and they're marketers, how much code have you written before AIs came? Probably none. I hadn't written any. Maybe I had done some HTML stuff years and years ago. But we're moving to this like ideas person, right? You look at like Apple, right? You have Steve Jobs, he was the ideas guy and the driver, but Steve Wozniak was the developer. Like Steve Jobs is not coding anything. So he got He got really lucky with these two people that just happened to work really well. and it panned out perfectly. But there's so many examples of the really good marketers, really good ideas people. They understand the marketing side. They understand how to grow the business. They just don't understand how to develop it. And I've already come out with 4 or 5 different MVPs to test out. I can send it to my clients who have no idea how to code and they don't even want to touch it, but they send it to me and we can start building that out. So that's another cool avenue for marketers that I just don't think has ever existed. And like if I was a pure developer person, I'd be trying to learn marketing way faster than on our side trying to learn development. Development is almost commoditized at this point.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm so glad that this is the direction AI is taking, because it would really suck if it took the marketing piece first, but it's looking like the marketing piece is everything is downstream of data, and data is downstream of programming. The programming is really the first big challenge to solve, and then we're all in danger, but the development is definitely number one. And I think what we're seeing is a concentration of, or let's say we are seeing it's like a forced evolutionary event where it's like AI will simultaneously put like at least 50% of development jobs at risk, but it will also increase the economic opportunities for the top 50%, and 50% just being a placeholder.
Yep.
And here's why. The bottom 50% are at risk because now you and I can build an MVP of an app for $2,000 instead of $100,000,
Yep.
which is what it would have cost us 2 years ago. And the person that loses is that developer that only cost $100,000 that we would have hired. And then let's say we succeed, because now we have several apps we can build for that $2,000 mark. And one of them pops and we get 100 paying customers. It's now a $50,000 a month SaaS business. What's the first thing we do? Well, since we vibe coded it, it's a mess and we don't understand how it works. So we hire a very expensive developer to come in and fix it.
Yep.
And that's the developer from the top 50% of the pool. And we hire them for $500,000 a year because now they're charging a lot more because we're dependent on them and they know that we can pay because the business has to have some clients in order for it to be worth reworking. So now the economic opportunity of the top 50% is much greater. And then if you extend that to the top 1%, that's where you're getting $100 million pay packages. And so that narrative works like across all of the different levels of the current developers. And I think that will be echoed in every single industry. That's how once AI learns how to do marketing, like better be in the top half at least, because the same exact dynamic's going to happen. And then same thing, top 1% of marketers will get these crazy pay packages because everybody's going to be building all of their marketing with AI. And then when something breaks, only the best marketers will be able to figure it out. The rest of the marketers are going to be just as good as the AI in figuring out what will happen. I'm curious your take on that.
Let's take a look at the easiest job you could potentially get in America, which would be, let's say, like Uber driver. If you have a license, you can put your license into Uber and you can start driving and making money. And I know people who they've gotten laid off and they can make 20 to 30 bucks an hour immediately. That's fantastic. We should all be praising this. It's like the peak of capitalism, solving this issue. I still have a car. I can still drive around. But Friday night and trying to go out with some friends, like, you're going to call Uber, right? It's one of these things. In the past, that layer of entrepreneurship was basically certain jobs, right? Uber and such. Now I can vibe code something, as you said. It could be 2,000, it could be 200, it could be 20 bucks. Like I could, if I really wanted to work hard, I could probably get it done and just download Claude and try to get at it. So I think that the number of companies is going to explode. If, as you said, it used to be 100 grand, maybe you went to India and it was 30 grand, but it wasn't very good. And it was really hard to understand them. And they took 3 to 6 months longer than you were expecting. So this now you're going to get these vibe coded tools and it's literally like the Uber driver model for entrepreneurship. Like people should be playing around with this. I am playing around with it Friday night, Saturday night. It's like my video game, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Like I think it's the most addicting, amazing tool to play around with, and you can build something and make money. You can spend $100 and potentially make $5,000 over the weekend. That's amazing. It's I would just tell people play around. If you have ideas and side thoughts, and your every tool is built for enterprise. That's been what it's been going towards for years. Now we're getting these like niche plays, and you can really solve hyper niche problems. So I'm very bullish on entrepreneurship. I think some of these developers, I still think there's probably $1 billion market to fix your vibe coded app. I think that's another one. Yeah, I think it's just a great time to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think that the idea that entrepreneurs will need these like vibe code fixer developers, I don't think that's as much of an own as the developers think it is, because it's really just like moving their market share to like after the development. It's like previously you were the single bottleneck for taking any idea to MVP, and that sucked for the entrepreneurs. And now you are, after the MVP, you are fixing the stuff that actually does have product market fit. And yes, you're getting more for it, but as an industry, like the the post idea pre-implementation phase of any app, that market share is like dropping significantly because we have these vibe code apps to replace that process. So it's like the market for the developers is shifting dramatically.
Definitely. And my sister's a developer, and she's played around with these tools. She's like, gets the job done. Like it will be the wheels for the car. But there's going to be a lot of bumps. Like if it should be 50 lines of code, it's like 300 or 400 lines of code. And it's just not great. Fun fact, Uber was basically vibe coded. They used a development team in Spain. And then when they got big, because they were just doing small money at the time, they had to recode all of their all of their app, but it was all in Spanish. So they
Wow.
had to they basically are the perfect case study for a vibe coded tool, except they was obviously real developers, but still similar, and they seem to be doing okay.
No way. That's so cool. I'm writing that. Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about software is that the end user has no idea what's going on behind the scenes. They know if it works and if it provides value for them, and if it's slow, and that like what the problems are. But I don't think the average user really cares about the complexity of the back end, or if other people face bugs because of their unique use cases. They just care about their own experience with the app. And like it's very normal for imagine, look at how many times like Facebook, for example, has completely changed their UI, and everybody hates it and everybody still stayed for like forever. And the reason people left was not because of that. It was because of the market, like the audience on it shifted. It had nothing to do with the UI changes or the functionality changes, like the endless numbers of changes. So it's like people don't care that much about the back end or even the functionality, as long as the functionality is evolving and it's getting faster and better. So people are very understanding, I think, of changes to the code base for an app, as long as it still serves their needs.
It needs to be magical still, but they don't really care how that magic happens. In the beginning of Instagram, it took a while to load the wheel of that photo to be added. And so what they would do is they would add the photo to be added first, and then you had to add the description and all the information. During that period of time when you add the photo and when you add the description, it was actually loading it in the back end. Like now it just does it in a second. But in the beginning, they didn't have the capacity. So you would load your photo in, get ready to add your description. It was like intentionally like beta adding it into the system. And so it felt like instantaneous, but it really wasn't. It was just doing something and forcing you to add a description. If you technically added no description and went and hit, it would take a while, but it
Oh,
had to feel magical. And that's, if you look at the early stages of Instagram, it was like slow, bang, like immediate.
yeah. I've heard of different instances where a business will be slower when you measure it like with a stopwatch. It'll be slower. But then because of very clever UI design, it feels faster than a competitor. That it's actually slower than. I agree with you, the magical piece. That's a huge differentiator and a necessity in this competitive software environment.
Definitely.
So you mentioned something that like everybody has been going for enterprise SaaS. That's been like the main thing. Is what's the next focus area for the software market? Are you saying it's more in the entrepreneurial space, for example, where it's people like me, you and I, that are vibe coding things and are looking for tools, but obviously aren't at full enterprise on their own?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of people now can realize that enterprise SaaS and paying HubSpot. So if you're, let's say you're going to get a CRM, right? You have Salesforce that's way too expensive, or you get HubSpot, or you get something else at that lower end, but it's still expensive, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think that you can do that on your own and save some money. You're already seeing people moving off of like AWS because it's so expensive, but they'll spend 500,000 and that's great. They save 3 million. So I think it's a little bit of the both, like serving the lower tier, and then on the enterprise, I just am a little worried about that. I think it's a shaky market. I would not be, if I am a HubSpot owner, I would be a little worried right now because do all those people need that? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that AI accelerates the innovation for a lot of softwares. And I'm glad you mentioned CRM because I think that's one of them that will be shaken up significantly over the next few years. And I think that HubSpot is doing a good job of building a moat around itself with a lot of the new features that they're building, especially around event tracking and attribution. I think that if they can build that out really well, they will be very secure in their market. Because otherwise, it's a phone book. How much can you charge for that? But if you include like complex attribution and stuff, okay, like you're creating a more unified value. Or let's say that is an environment play, like Apple, where they lock you into an environment or ecosystem. It's an ecosystem play. If you have attribution and the contact database together, then you like have to lock into the ecosystem to keep having your attribution. Yeah, that would be a very smart play. But yeah, I expect the CRM market to evolve significantly. I have not been very impressed with how it works. I think it's like way overly complicated, and I think it needs a massive work. That and also VCS and like GitHub like tools, I think are disasters. It's like used GitHub.
Yes.
It sucks, right? To
Yeah.
me, it sucks. I do pull and push, like nobody knows the difference. And all the way that it works, like GitHub was just the first to the market. Like GitHub was the first successful ECS that really was adoptable. It worked, but that doesn't mean, and I saw a tweet about this, somebody else is going to come up with a better option. This is not the best option, especially now that the software market is expanding to people like us who are not traditional developers and aren't like developers are very technically minded. So they understand, they can figure it out. Like even though GitHub is really complicated, they figure it out and they figure out continuous integration and testing, which is also a super complicated piece of development. But people like us, it's like nonsense. It's like it's super complicated. Like I could barely figure out. The only reason I can use GitHub pretty much for my app is because there's an automatic integration with Lovable. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to figure out a bidirectional sync with. It's like this stuff is like it's for very technical people. And that has been like a moat around the software development industry for a long time. And I think that there will be new software that makes it much more intuitive for how to track changes in code. It shouldn't be that complicated. And I was thinking about that. Sorry, I'm going on around here. And I was thinking about what is the best way I've ever seen historical changes tracked? Because communicating time is hard. If you have ever used like Apple's time machine, like you would expect Apple to have the best version of the UI for time tracking. And I hated it. Like it was a disaster. It's like trying to show me like I'm looking in a time portal or something. I'm like, come on, that's not what I want to see. And in Lovable, I think it's one of the best historical change trackings I've ever seen. And it's so simple. It just shows you for every step that every change you made, it's like you seeing your conversation for the changes you made. And then just has a little restore button. Like, I did this. If you want to go back to this exact point, click restore. Boom, we're back. And that was because I was thinking, like, if I were to rethink how this stuff works, what is the best? Who does it the best? And I think that was the best example I've seen. So I think I would expect some big changes to come, and I would expect GitHub to get some competitors. It's about time GitHub gets some competitors.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, off the soapbox. Curious your thoughts.
I totally agree. I think that you brought up an interesting point. The non-technical is going to be the angle. So I hadn't really thought about that, but I do think that's really an interesting market to think through. And yeah, just make it easy for everyone to understand. HubSpot, if anyone can solve some of these challenges on the sales side, they can. They really are smart. They're very bright. But are they worth that? Like, to some companies, yes. But there's only so many companies. And they used to get away with kind of marketing to the lower tier startups, but can you afford 500, 600 bucks a month? Probably not. So I'm not bullish on CRMs. I think a lot of these companies are going to go and struggle to get growth. And my biggest thing for understanding where the market is moving, hyper startup focus, which is a terrible business to market to because they're cash trapped and all that stuff. But I think that's going to really crush a lot of these companies.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I really like that focus on super startups. It gives me an idea for SearchMaster to make it possibly free to other vibe coders to a certain limit, something like that.
Supabase is a back end, seems to do it the best. They're like, basically, we'll give you 2 for free, and then we'll charge you $25 a month for each vibe coded tool that you want to build. And they're still billing me 75 to 100 bucks every single month. It's great for them. And they're an automatic integration to Bolt, Replit, maybe a few other of these. I don't know about Lovable. They might be as well.
That's exact. I'm using the same stack.
For them, I would look to them as the future. Like Light, can they do it for the large companies? Of course. That's where they're going to make a lot of their money. But in the past, they were probably getting 0 to 1% of their revenue from startups, real startups with no revenue. And now they get to make a lot of money on because I don't have 6 startups that I've been building. I have maybe 1 or 2 in my mind, and then I forget about one. And so there's like a lot of like subscription problems on my end, and I just pay it. So I really like that. I mean, I posted about this a while back that like Supabase is kind of the future. And if they were a public company, I would be putting like 80% of my money in them.
Yeah, it's infrastructure. The infrastructure play. It's a very powerful place to be. Like NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, yes. But there are other infrastructure companies, but they are the ones that are going to benefit the most because they're such a plug and play.
Yeah. Which exactly addresses what we were talking about like the development market getting a lot less technical and gravitating towards the easiest and best solution. No longer just the best, but like intuitiveness means a lot more now. I want to share a optimistic take on AI. This is a tweet I just saw. To replace programmers with robots, clients will have to accurately describe what they want. We're safe. And so I think that speaks to that idea of the forced evolution of the market. Not only will the service providers be the bottom half will be forced out, top half will get even more opportunity. Not only will that happen for the provider side, it will also happen for the client side. So the clients that currently overly rely on their providers to help guide them are going to lose because now you can, like, the people who are the idea people who have visions and push for those visions to happen are benefiting from AI and are accelerated by AI. And that's the top half of the innovators or of the clients of all the people who are requesting work to be created. And so that tweet has a lot of truth to it, at least for the bottom half of clients across every vertical industry. And the opposite end is the top half are going to be accelerated. The people who actually know what they want are going to get it a lot faster and be able to innovate a lot faster. And then just like with the developers, the very top 1% of clients in any industry are going to become these like super high paid consultants, because, or maybe not, maybe they'll just be like become like super entrepreneurs, but they will be rewarded disproportionately if they, like the people with the absolute best visions who know exactly what they want to build are going to just be able to build so much. I'm excited to see like how this industry evolves, because I'm seeing that trend towards this forced evolution. I think it's going to happen in every industry.
Yeah, and I think we saw this in beer markets. These microbreweries, it's exploded because everyone wants to brew their own beer and their own style and their own flavor. And think of it like farming, right? 100 years ago, 50% of the population was farming, and they were like milling and doing all. I mean, it's a hard, laborious job. It's really hard. And then we all moved to the city, and like 1% of the population is farmers. It's all like machines. And we're so divorced from the food chain ecosystem. I don't know how to even like milk a cow. I wouldn't know where to start.
Same.
But now with this ability to like basically brew your own product, you can put your own spin on things. And yeah, it's not going to be the next Anheuser-Busch, but you might be able to sell to 10,000 people. Like in my small town in Easton, Massachusetts, it's got a brewery that came out, Shoveltown, great beer. They're in the local market. They're not going to ever be $1 billion business, but that's okay. Like they have a little brewery in the area. They're getting local traffic. People love going there. It's made an otherwise boring and mundane town a little bit more interesting. That's the sparking of the joy that like I think I'm really bullish on in software. Like the CRMs of the world, and like those are very boring. So like how do we make it a little bit more fun? How do we add the community element to it? Like how do you know exactly how to, like, your own little brew is like something that someone really likes.
I love that. Like we will have more tailored businesses, like a CRM for a specific industry, for a specific business model. And it's not going for the biggest market share. It's not going to be the one size fits all. But now the technology is available to do that in an economically viable way, whereas previously that was not the case.
You know, the beautiful thing you said in the beginning, HubSpot is basically just a phone book. If that's what they are, then that's not great. If you were in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and you just decided, you know what, I'm going to make a phone book or a CRM, whatever it is, for just Scranton, Pennsylvania people, that's actually great. Like now I have this ability to connect with everyone near me, and all I do is I live with people and I talk to people. It's a CRM, but it's also like a community gathering every week. Scranton CRM is going to have its own meetup or whatever. Like I'm cool with that. I think that's what the CRM should be. It shouldn't just be a giant lead list with 100,000 people and you got people calling up for $1 an hour. That's not what it should be. So bring that community aspect. Like I think so many of these local towns have like destroyed by shipping jobs out for the past 100 years. There's going to be a SaaS element to each town and each city that I think is going to be cool. I don't know how that all plays out. I don't think there's 100,000 CRMs to be built, but I do think there's something there where like people can rally around this.
I love that. All right, Justin, I think that this was a really exciting future-looking conversation. So I think we should have another conversation maybe in a year, maybe less, and just see how the industry shakes out and follow up based on this.
Yeah, I'd love to see how these predictions pan out. I'm sure mine are going to be 99% wrong.
It's the 1% that matters, as long as we're betting on it. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.